And I just sat there with my jaw on the floor. I was blown away. And what that does, it showed me, by me being vulnerable, they grew another 10 feet. They became these incredible giants that I'd never seen.
Hello and welcome to Doing the Opposite Business Disruptors, Conversations with Jeff Dewing. This is the podcast where we explore how leadership, culture and courage can transform your business, but also life. I'm Sam Walker. Jeff Dewing has built the company Cloudfm Group by breaking every rule in the book. After losing everything, he came back by doing the opposite of what conventional wisdom taught him. In this episode, we're going to be exploring a leadership skill that's often really misunderstood: vulnerability. Jeff believes that showing your flaws, your doubts, and humanity isn't a weakness, it's what makes you a stronger leader. Jeff, you've said the most powerful thing that a leader can say is, "I don't know." That really isn't something you hear every day from a CEO. So why does vulnerability matter so much to you in being a good leader?
Because it makes you human. And when people see that you are authentically human, they start to realise what a leader's role is. A leader's role is not to know everything. A leader's role is not to be the best at everything. A leader's role is to get the best out of other people. And you can only do that by being brutally frank and honest. And I've only learnt this on a journey. It's not something I was born to know. It's stuff about understanding people. And people say to me, "God, Jeff, you're an incredible psychologist. How long did you study psychology?" I said, "I've never studied psychology, but I love to see how people behave and react and react to situations." And of course, I've enjoyed my journey by poking and prodding people to spur reactions, to try and understand their reactions. So it was really interesting. And as much as I've gone through that journey, I didn't really truly understand vulnerability until COVID. And that's when I saw the power of vulnerability when used authentically, not used as a tool, but used authentically. And when COVID hit and we were collecting a lot of money and it fell off a cliff, and suddenly
Can you explain that? So it fell off a cliff because of the nature of your business was that you were in the hospitality and facilities management. And so if those places shut down, so did your income stream.
Exactly. So when all the restaurants closed because of COVID, our income stream went from 7 million down to 200 grand. And that was a month, obviously. So that meant that I've got 500 mouths to feed. I've got no idea what on earth to do. At that point, we didn't even know if humanity was going to survive, let alone whether money was going to be a problem. My team, my board, convened to say, right, emergency meeting, what we're going to do. And the first thing they said to me was, "Come on, Jeff," because I'm always full of the drive and the ideas. "Come on, Jeff. What's the plan? What are we going to do?" And I sat in silence. I went, "I've got no frigging idea. I don't even know where to start. In fact, this is killing me." And for most of you that know, I can sleep standing up on an underground train. I've lost sleep over the last 2 or 3 days, and that's never, ever happened to me.
Did you worry that would scare them, though, because you were that solid leader?
Yes, but I decided that there was no time for pretense. I had to speak exactly how I felt, and I was scared. I was worried. I thought, this is it. We're done. All this hard work, all this effort, and I was worried that it was the end. And then suddenly something happened that I didn't expect. And they said to me, "Jeff, we want you to take 3 days off, go away." I was living in Portugal. They said, "Go and spend some time on the beach and reflect and just do your stuff. We're going to do a load of work here. We're going to do some scenario planning." And this was on the Tuesday. They said, "Let's convene a call for 10 o'clock Friday. I don't want you doing any emails. I want you to look at your phone or your computer for 3 days."
Did you manage that?
I did, yes, because I was drained of energy because I just didn't know what to do. So I literally just went for walks, walked on the beach, thought this is it, preparing for the worst and whatever. Anyway, I got back on the call on the Friday, and this team had put together about 11 different scenarios. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do that. If this happens, we do that. And they put together these ideas that were just mind-blowing. And I just sat there with my jaw on the floor. I was blown away. And after that meeting where I sort of listened to what they had to say and said, this is incredible stuff, I then went away for the weekend. Well, I didn't go away for the weekend. I then obviously switched off for the weekend. And I sat on the beach watching the waves. And I went, how on earth did they do that? They had 3 days. They must have worked day and night, must have tested each other. And they've done stuff I couldn't have even dreamt of doing. And what that does, it showed me, by me being vulnerable, they grew another 10 feet. They became these incredible giants that I'd never seen, which only made me think, God, I've been constraining them because I've always taken the lead. And then to see this come up, and then what ended up happening was one of them said, trust me, the government's going to solve the problem with furlough. And I said, well, they didn't use furlough at the time. They said, the government's going to pay the salaries. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you've got every company in the country already got payroll set up to pay people. For them to try and individually pay people separately, it's going to be a car crash. So all they're going to do is they're going to pay the companies to pay the payroll. And that's exactly what happened before we even knew about furlough. And they had a scenario for that. And we just played out the scenarios that were relevant. And we came through it. And the one thing they said is, this is not scenarios to survive. These are scenarios to thrive. And it was put a shiver down the back of my spine. And I just saw, there was 7 members of the board, and I just saw 7 completely different people. They were just off the scale. And that's when I saw the power of me being vulnerable. They became the giant.
Isn't it funny that we all think that confidence is the most important thing? But in fact, you were being confident. You were confident in saying, I'm not confident.
Yeah.
And that's actually was the key.
Well, it's some of the golden rules of life, isn't it? About, when you talk to your people, your family, your colleagues, it's okay to not be okay. And it's the ability to be honest about it. And I use the analogy that says you stand outside your office having a cigarette or having a cup of coffee with a colleague, you're having a chat, and an old lady walks past and she falls over. What do?
Well, you go and help.
Go and pick her up, right? Yet the amount of people that are falling over, you just can't see it. And that's the vulnerability. If someone says, I'm really struggling, my wife left me last night, or whatever the case may be, can I do anything? You will naturally gravitate towards helping that person. But when you go, no, everything's fine, then you've isolated yourself from anybody caring for you or looking after you or helping you or even comforting you. But you see an old lady fall over, everybody bar no one would automatically go and help that lady up. And it's just that, and that's the vulnerability element.
It must be challenging, though, if you have this reputation of being this fearless leader, of being the man or woman who has the answers, of being the rock, and people are, I don't know what to do, they will always know, to then turn around and go, actually, I don't. There is, in some people, I guess, a feeling that, well, I don't want to let people down by not being always that pillar of strength.
That rock, yeah. Well, what was even more interesting was once I'd seen that, which I couldn't believe. And again, it's about authenticity. We communicated twice a week with the whole company about what we knew and what we didn't know. And on the first time that we done our communication on Zoom, where everyone logged on, there was 380 odd people online. And I'd been given a script only to keep me on the straight and narrow about the subject matter, about what we knew, what we were doing. People had just been sent home. The summer, it was a lovely summer, so people were enjoying the summer, but were still fearful about the future, their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And I start reading out this script, and something happened that's never happened to me since I was 14 years old. I just fell into a heap. I cried like a baby. I was holding back my lips were going. I was in a terrible state. And I just had to pause to try and gather myself, to try and carry on the communication. And whilst that was happening, and it may be worse, whilst that was happening, all these love hearts and thumbs were just coming up all over the place on screen. And then messages started coming saying, don't worry, Jeff, we got your back. We're all together. We live as one, we die as one, we win together, we lose together. And these are people on the front line. Some people I didn't even know they were. And I went, oh my God. And that was me, authentically, because I didn't plan to do that. It just happened because it was such a high emotionally environment. And to see the response of everybody was overwhelming. But what it done is it gave you a strength that you'd never seen before that says, my God, we really are in this all together. This is unbelievable.
So connection was more powerful than confidence.
all day long. But it was the authenticity. It was the people, frontline staff, from help desk operators to managers to directors, was sitting there, and all they wanted to do, I was the old lady that fell over. All they wanted to do was come and help me up.
Yeah. You talked about, how having that vulnerability with your staff can be really powerful in creating an even stronger leadership. But what about with your clients? Have you got instances of actually where being vulnerable with clients led to that deeper connection?
The same thing applied. COVID. We learned a lot of lessons from COVID. The world learned a lot of lessons. The first thing you do when you're in that environment and your clients will stop paying you, and we were owed millions. And the client said, look, we're not paying anybody. We don't know what's happening. We've shut the restaurants. We've got no income. So, the checkbooks are closed. And the first thing that we start talking about is let's issue statutory demands. Let's issue winding up petitions. Let's go let's go with a knife. Let's go because you're retaliating. You're a cornered rat, right? You're retaliating. And then I said, how about we do the opposite? How about we actually support them? And the team says to me, what do you mean? So I said, well, let's reach out to the C-suite of these organisations saying, look, we're not going to phone you up every 5 minutes for money. We understand the problem you're facing. We're also having the same problem. And of course, we've got the same problem because we've got a supply chain that we're trying to manage that also not being paid by us because we've done the same. We've locked the checkbooks. So everyone is scared. Everyone is frightened. And more importantly there is 100% uncertainty. And that's the one thing that kills a human being is uncertainty. So why don't we go for little and often? And they said, what do you mean? So I said, well, you owe me 7 million quid. How about you pay me 100 grand a week? And now I can pay out 100 grand a week to the suppliers, which means they're getting 5 grand a week each, whatever. And there's something happening, which means people still believe in the spirit of the human spirit. We're at least doing something, little and often. And every client bar one agreed to do that. And that meant that we were receiving a couple of 300 grand and paying it out supply chain. And then, of course, we were saying supply chain, look, we're telling you exactly what's happening. This company just paid us this, we're paying you that, we're paying that. Everything was completely, brutally transparent. And then occasionally one client wouldn't pay us 1 week because of various challenges they'd had. And we said, no, it's fine, we're working with you. We was never aggressive. We was like, how do we fix this together? And of course, what that done, that's vulnerability, right? And what that done was the relationships with our clients went to a whole new level because they said, oh my God, we had everybody else threatening to pull service, pull this, pull that, not supporting us here, you owe us millions, we're going to take you to court, we're going to do that. Yet you sat down and said, how do we solve this problem together? And it built a whole new level of trust. So much so that as we came out of COVID, the relationships with those clients were 100 times stronger than they were pre-COVID.
What about somebody listening to this who goes, that's really inspiring, that's really great. I don't have the courage to do that. I don't have the courage to be vulnerable because it is actually letting down a guard that I've built my professional career on.
Then you carry on doing the same thing.
Have you ever regretted being open with your team?
No, never. The more open I am, when I see the responses by that openness, makes it easy for me to be open again. It's that first hurdle. It's that first jump. That first
person on the dance floor,
coming out your comfort zone. Absolutely. It's that first jump when you say, do you know what, this isn't so bad, and then it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. And it's like I said before, it's like keynote speaking. When you go and do your first keynote or you go and do your first speech on stage, you are absolutely shitting yourself because you've never done it before, right? But when you just do it and do it and do it and you speak about your specialist subject, you know about it, you're passionate about it. But more importantly, imagine you talk to an audience of 2,000 people about a subject. It might be culture, might be environment, might be FM, might be whatever. There's always somebody that wants to hang you out to dry. And how do you control that? Well, the key to controlling that is being honest and being vulnerable. And you'll get a question come from Kerbal that will talk about, financial, balance sheet exchange. It might be about FX. It might be about what they say. So how do you manage that? So how would you deal with that? So I've got no idea. Never happened to me. Or they'll say, tell me about this. How would you do this or how would you do that? So I've got no idea, never done it. It's about being honest about it, not trying to answer all the questions and saying, look, I'll tell you what I know, but I'll also tell you that I don't know that. And it's just about being honest. And then all you do is you shut the person down that's actually got a hidden agenda. You just shut them down. You say, I don't know. That's way beyond. You have to ask someone much cleverer than me about that.
And that disarms them. But in a way that actually, again,
of course,
creates more connection.
But at the same time, they come back and go, oh, he didn't try to be clever.
Yeah.
So you've then built another connection because you're not someone that's trying to be clever than. Yeah, there's a golden rule about leadership, and that is that never ever think for 1 second that you're the cleverest person in the room. And how do you spot a leader in a meeting of 12 people? It's the one that is giving no answers, only asking questions. And it's also, you spot a leader in the room by the last person to speak because they're curious about what everyone else has got to say first.
I mean, that really does fly in the face of pretty much everything we're taught from school. I mean, any questions, people are ashamed to put their hand up and say, I don't know. And in a way, that becomes the norm even before you enter the world of work.
It does remind me of a great story that happened to me once that will live with me forever. I was asked to attend a meeting and my operations director was holding a meeting and they had a challenge or a problem they needed to solve, really complex problem. I can't remember what the problem was, but it was a complex problem. And he'd assembled 12 people to talk about this problem that was somehow connected to this problem or potentially could create a solution. And he said, Jeff, can you come and sit in on this meeting? He said, because I'd like your perspective. I said, yeah. And he puts the problem up on a flip chart. And they begin to talk about the problem, they contextualise it, and they then start saying, well, so let's now talk about the potential solutions. So they go around the table, and there's various ideas, whatever, and each time an idea came up, they went, yes, great idea, but that's going to cause this problem, that's going to cause that problem. And because I was an observer, I didn't say you're not allowed to say yes, but. And anyway, they went round the table, and it was 2.5 hours, this meeting. And I sat silent for all of it. And at the very end, John Cotton, who was the operations director, fantastic guy, basically they drew a blank. We can't find a way out of this. So he said to me, Jeff, you've been sitting there silent for 2.5 hours. What do you think? I said, I've got no idea. It's a complex problem. No idea at all. He said, well, you must have some thought process. I said, no, John, let me ask you a question. So he said, what? I said, what do you think the answer is? He said, you just sat here and listened to me for 2.5 hours, not know the answer. So, but if you did know the answer, what would you do? I would do blah, 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 blah. He went, you bastard. How did you do that? I said, I just freed your thinking, John. You were barriered by yourself, right? Now, and what he came up with was not the total solution, but it was 1,000 times further than the 2.5 hour debate had gone on. It's the ability to unconstrain yourself. And that's what leaders do. It's not about giving the answer, it's about helping your team find the answers.
I mean, as someone who's sat, especially early on in my career, in so many meetings, panicking that I didn't have anything to say, that would be a really valuable lesson. Because I think a lot of people are afraid of losing credibility by saying, I don't know.
No, it's about the fact you play people in position, and the most powerful thing in any discussion or meeting or keynote is a pause. You don't have to fill the pauses with meaningless words. It's the ability to speak when you've got something to say.
And you're then therefore also encouraging people to do the same because you're modelling the behaviour that you want to see.
And of course, those people feel much stronger in the meeting that failed to come up with a solution in 2.5 hours, but then listen to me saying, I don't know. So they went, oh, we're not all stupid then. This is tough. And it just enables people to grow and be confident in their own situation that says, I don't feel stupid or embarrassed now.
Thank you. That's really insightful. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you for listening to or watching Doing the Opposite, Business Disruptors Conversations with Jeff Dewing. You can find out more about Jeff's work at jeffdewing.co.uk. And if you enjoyed this episode, do share it with somebody who is ready to challenge the norm. Next time, we're going to be exploring culture as competitive advantage, why trust, empowerment, and people-first values can actually transform performance. To find out more, do visit jeffdewing.co.uk, with thanks to Nicola Crawshaw at Cloud and also to Michael Blades at What Goes On Media. Doing the Opposite Business Disruptors, Conversations with Jeff Dewing is a What Goes On Media production.